Hey guys, David here. Just on a little afternoon break here. Thought I'd come out and do a quick video and smoke a pipe. I'm using today my Falcon pipe. I've got a windscreen. In order to transport this in my pocket, it's kind of rinky-dink, but I kind of use a rubber band here to put around my bowl and keeps it nice and tight. The windscreen isn't always enough to do that. Sometimes it will pop off, and you got a pocket full of tobacco. So I use a windscreen. And in this pipe, just to let you know, the bowls screw off, and what you do is you have a thing called a thermidor in there, and basically you insert your pipe filter in here. Now you can buy them or you can make them. I'm pretty cheap, so I just take pipe cleaners and I put them around a pin or any round object to make my own. So this goes in here like that, and then you just screw the bowl on, and that will trap any moisture, other things in that bowl to keep your smoke nice and dry. Okay, so you just screw this on nice and tight. Take this wind screen or wind cap off, and then you got your pipe. Smoking today some dashboard stoved. I believe it is Orlick Golden Slice from Jamie, smoking in my car, who should be reappearing hopefully soon. Anyway, so this is a pipe I have. I have a lot of samples at work. I have these little pocket tins, and anything less than an ounce gets put in one of these. So I have a whole little shoebox full that I keep in an office drawer. In fact, I put a picture on YouTube about an hour or so ago. I have little labels on them. So anyway, like I said, I keep all my samples in there. I also keep my Falcon filters in one of those as well. Whoops. Pretty handy little things. I've got Falcon filters in those, and I've got some of the other regular 9mm Falcons and another filters in another one. Anyway, but I'm not here really to talk about filters. What I thought I'd do this afternoon is talk about the next line, the next job in my long procession of employment location jobs. So the last video I covered C&D's truck wash, where I was employed for a while. Told you all about that. Well, after I'd worked there for a while, my other buddies who were working there with me, they were seeking employment elsewhere, and I was kind of thinking the same thing. Business kind of slowed down in the winter time. No one wants to wash their semis or anything, so it got pretty slow. We weren't getting many hours, so one of the guys decided he'd go out. We have a lot of oilfield employment in Kern County. It's a major industry here, oilfield work. So back then in the 80s, we had a lot of, it was at the height of the oil boom, I think. We had a lot of oilfield maintenance companies, they were called. These are companies that would go out on leases and oil leases and do repair work, construction, things like that to keep everything going. So we found out that a couple of these places were hiring on a daily basis. And what I mean by that was they would pick a work crew every morning. So you could go stand out in the corporate yard, and basically they would choose from the guys gathered around there. So I found that at one company, B&R Oilfield Maintenance here in Kern County, Bakersfield. They were out kind of in the outlying area back then. It's no longer outlying, it's a very populated area. But anyway, they had a corporate yard, so I was told to first I had to go through a little interview process, which is I thought was kind of funny. So I don't know, got on my best blue jeans. I remember wearing a red and white button-down shirt. And anyway, going to an interview. Talked with the guy out there for a while. I don't even know what we talked about. He just got my information, I guess. But then he just told me to start showing up in the mornings. So the deal was, you'd get up when it's still dark outside, probably about 5 a.m. I remember heading to the corporate yard really early. I have distinct memories. This would have been in probably 1982. Distinct memories of the songs that I listened to driving out to that corporate yard. A couple of songs. One would have been by a group named Chilliwack. I don't even know what the song was called. The verse was, "You've been gone, 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 you've been gone so long." Maybe it was called "So Long." I don't know. And then another song by Blue Oyster Cult called "I'm Burning for You." So those two songs, it was just local radio, but those two songs must have been on a lot, because I remember back then hearing those going out to this oil field job. Anyway, I digress. So I went up to this oil field corporate yard. It was still dark. There was a barrel, a big oil barrel, the 50-gallon drum, with a fire in it. All the guys were kind of standing around that. Guys were walking everywhere. There were a lot of A-frame trucks, buses, and things like that, because they transported the guys to the oil leases on these buses. Anyway, so stood around for a while. There's a platform out in the back, and after a while, a guy came out with a clipboard on the platform, and he started calling off names. He'd call off a list of names and say, "You go with such and such person." Call off their list. You go with this foreman. So, much to my surprise, I got called on the very first day of going out there, which was pretty cool. Now, my friend Travis, he went out there with me as well. We were both looking for work. Well, during this time, I had a regular haircut, kind of like my hair right now, but it was dark and more plentiful. Travis always kind of had long hair. He had that surfer guy look back in the 80s. He was a skateboarder. But poor Travis, he never got picked. So the deal was, he'd throw his skateboard in the back of my 73 Monte Carlo. We'd drive out to the oil company, and if he didn't get called, he'd ride that skateboard back home. It was a few miles back home. But anyway, I got chosen, he didn't. So I guess I always had to get a skateboard out of the back of the car anyway. So what they do is they load you up on these buses. They're kind of old buses, with just bench seats. So you'd get on there, and you'd go for a ride, about a half an hour, to an outlying area. There's a little town out here close to in Kern County called Buttonwillow. Buttonwillow is a town surrounded by oil leases. So that's where the oil lease was that we were on. And I don't remember the name of if it was a Chevron lease or one of the major oil companies had a lease out there. So the bus would make its way out there, and you can imagine the plentiful conversations on the way on the bus. I remember hearing about guys going to strip joints, getting drunk, and I was like 18 years old. Sorry, my video just got interrupted. Anyway, I was about 18, hadn't done any of those things. I wasn't into drinking or going to strip clubs or anything like that. I was a church kid. So anyway, I was appalled at all the conversation. Guys talking about stuffing dollar bills down ladies' undergarments and bras. So I eventually began taking my little cassette Walkman, where I could put on my headphones and drown out all the conversation while driving. And I'd usually fall asleep for a bit going out there. So we'd go out to this lease, and you basically unload. You'd find out, gather around your foreman. He'd put you on a work crew, tell you what you're doing on that day. Most of my time was spent being a welder's helper, which my friend the grinder, I was once again acquainted with the grinder. However, in the oil fields, you're not really given the opportunity to stand around grinding things. You must get down, lie on your back, and grind over your head while sparks are shooting everywhere. You had to wear a hard hat, and you got a face shield, but I just remember fighting those sparks, always going up my nose, under my face shield. I wasn't very good at being a welder's helper. I didn't like it at all. Sometimes you're on the fire crew, which meant you could have stood there where people were welding with a shovel, so that if they made a mistake, you could bash them in the head. No, so that if a fire started, you could shovel it out, I guess. Throw dirt on it. So I did that. Another job that we did was they did a lot of pouring of cement footings for I guess the racks that they would put the pipes on, the oil pipes. So they'd gather up all the young guys. I was, of course, one. It was you'd put on what we call the bucket brigade. So we'd have a truck full of cement, and basically had a long chain of guys with these big plastic buckets. They'd fill you up, and you'd walk over to wherever they were putting the cement and dump it in. So that happened an awful lot, which wasn't bad. So I'm trying to think of the other jobs. One of the last jobs I did there, and that's why I no longer worked there, was they had me leading a crew. Well, leading a crew, me and another guy. I was appointed the driver of the A-frame truck. So your job was to take this truck, go to the corporate yard, load up a designated size of pipe, and then load it up on the truck, take it back, and put it on the job site. So that was kind of fun. I enjoyed that. So I did that for a few days. One day, I had another guy that was working with me. I didn't know him. Every day the crew changed. Every morning you got picked again. You never knew for sure if you were going to work, but I worked quite a bit. One day, it must have been in the spring, I was doing that, delivering pipe. So me and the other guy, we stopped the truck, got the pipe out. We're putting the pipe on a rack, and the length of pipe got stuck on this rack. So I put my hand on the top of the rack, and I bent over to get this piece of pipe that had fallen. While I was doing that, the guy that I was working with, I guess he wasn't holding on tight, but a piece of pipe slipped and basically crushed my finger between the pipe and this metal rack. So, to this day, I have an index finger that is slightly impaired. My right hand, trigger finger, as it were. Anyway, I've had this since I was 18 years old. Broke the finger between these digits here, and I had a glove on. And when I had the glove on, I looked at my hand, and that finger was just drooping, and I was afraid it had knocked it off. But anyway, just crushed it in between those two places, broke it. One of the foremans ran me into town, about a half an hour drive to the hospital, urgent care. Basically, they put a plastic cast on my hand, and I was scheduled for hand surgery. So that was actually the end of my oilfield career. At that point, I couldn't work anymore, obviously. I went through the surgery, and they put a pin in my hand, stuck out on top of my hand. Well, I had a cast on, luckily, so but I had this pin in my finger to hold it together. Had a cast for a while. I don't know how long it was. It was a partial cast, went up past my wrist. My other fingers were exposed, but this finger was in a cast. I must have a picture somewhere. I do, actually. Anyway, so I remember that during that summer I was scheduled to go to a youth convention. It was in Miami, Florida. Our church every year we had a youth convention, so all the youth would gather, fly to whatever location, and have about a week's worth of convention. So ours is in Florida. So I remember having that cast on my arm in Florida, having to hold it above the water so that it wouldn't get wet. It made taking a shower fun too. I had bread bags that I would use, and I would rubber band them around my arm so I could take a shower until I had that, while I was recuperating. But I had that cast on forever. During that summer, I also went to a family camp with my church, and I remember trying to play volleyball. Couldn't do that very well, but being stupid and young, I was horsing around with a couple friends of mine, and one of my other friends tossed another guy onto me, and the guy landed on my hand and basically broke the pin off of my finger. So I had to get that fixed up. Well, that's probably a reason why Achille can't use my finger anymore, because it messed up the socket. Well, my fault, goofing off. Well, so that was the end of my career at B&R Oilfield Maintenance. I was off for a while. I decided when I was getting workers' comp that I should go back to school. At that point, that kind of made my mind up that maybe manual labor wasn't the best way to spend my life. So, plus I was bored. Went to school, enrolled at Bakersfield College, started taking classes. Yeah, that was a nice time. It's the only time I'd ever not worked and gone to school for a few months. So anyway, well, that's the end of that story. So, hope you enjoyed it. We'll talk next time about my next job. Thanks, guys. God bless.